I'll be happy to talk more. Bodily injury from volunteers and employees. The time an employee or a volunteer can be hurt the most commonly is within the first 60 days of onboarding, 90 days of onboarding, right? So making sure that you're having a strict, onboarding plan. Obviously, she's happy with her forklift, but it's sometimes I think we fall into complacency, and we see hey, this lady, she's been driving the forklift forever. She knows what she's doing. Some of these actions have bigger consequences, and so we have to continually stress, hey, this is one we need to maintain a certain distance away from the forklifts. We have to have, if we are operating this, we have to do it at certain times, or we have to maybe do certain retrainings with certain machinery. It's just really important to just continually stress this, and it's a privilege because there are big consequences for some of these actions and responsibilities if they're not done right. There are services like a nurse's triage service. Like if someone gets hurt in workers' comp, you can call the workers' comp carrier and they can provide, hey, what should we do in this situation? And they can sometimes coach you in the right way. So companies have a lot of resources that you should try to utilize, and that sometimes you're trying to do. And I'm sure there's a lot of things you have in your own home office and how you handle things in office. But there's a lot of companies that have resources as well. So that's one of them. The workers' comp carriers would be curious to see what they could do and help you guys out. And then audit, skipping ahead. Then audit flow of people traffic. I went on a tour of a rescue mission down in D.C. and they had a department store, and there was only one way in and out of the area. So it was difficult to manage the flow of traffic, but it's something they have to do very intentionally and try to do as best as possible, especially when you have a lot of people coming in and out of the areas. This is a little bit of common sense, and I'm sure you all have to stay on top of this, but obviously sexual misconduct, employment practices, embezzlement. Nobody wants to give money to organizations that aren't taking care of these people. My pastor just did a sex series as a sermon series, and you can cheat on a math test. It's not the same as cheating on your wife, right? So there are HR helplines for property and casualty. I'm sure you probably have people in office that HR as well. There's templates if you're trying to update policies and procedures and things of that nature. So sometimes you have to recreate the wheel. So you can audit this annually or biannually, and then ultimately asking an HR, an IT, an attorney is going to be able to help you out draw some of these policies and procedures in place. Getting into property. Property is obviously a big challenge, and when you look at your biggest losses, you're talking about, if we were going to break down all of our property losses, wind, hail, fire, sewage and drain backup, and water damage are probably 80-90% of our entire losses, especially when it comes to premium dollars. So can't help everything, but as much as we can, how can we prevent the big losses? And obviously every region is differently, so you got to know what is your region most prone to. So this gets back in the capital expenditure budget. I just recommend organizations your size trying to retain as losses within $25,000 as much as possible. It's not small, and I understand it's a big cost, but we want to use insurance when we really need it and we want it under $25,000, because you're probably going to have a $10,000 deductible. I imagine you have a wind hail deductible. If it's, that'd be one thing to talk to your agent about. It's usually a percentage deductible. Again, depends where you're at. And like say, a percentage wind hail deductible. I'll just say you have a $10 million building, you have a 1% wind hail deductible. That means you have a $100,000 wind hail deductible. So if you have a windstorm come through, you have a $100,000 deductible. Okay, And now there's things called wind hail buybacks where you could spend another couple extra grand to reduce that $100,000 deductible to maybe $25,000 to make it a little bit more manageable. And again, this is something to talk when you're constructing your insurance policy, when you're creating your capital expenditure budget, to say, hey, this is our $25,000 wind hail deductible. Do we have this plan stashed away for whenever this does happen? And then crisis continuation plan. There's a coverage called business interruption coverage. Your building gets damaged. How are you going to maintain operations? How much is it going to cost? Is there a way we can pay to maintain operations during this period of time? There is a certain limit for a period of time. It depends how the policy is written. It can be either a number or it can just be like a dollar amount saying, okay, we can't use this building for a period of time. We have $2 million to maintain our operations. Great. Or there's a year span where we can, whatever our actual loss sustained is, then we'll have coverage for that period of time to maintain operations. But then after that year, then you don't have any coverage for business interruption. So you got to have a plan because insurance companies don't want this lingering out forever. So again, crisis continuation plan, how do we maintain our operations during a period of time? How does our insurance policy act during that time? And how do we maintain operations? So good. Wind hail. I feel like a roofing expert to some degree. I've learned more about roofs than I ever wanted to in my entire life. But this is a conversation you need to be constantly having about your roof years. Constantly. And if you can have a roofer, maintain, look at your roof on an annual basis, give documentation. Hey, here's our plan. This is how long we have to replace this roof. Hey, this is we're replacing it in phases. Usually, insurance companies will give grace to that. And I find it interesting. I'm wondering to see how different roof years or different roof types will change in different regions and how it will affect the roofing industry in general. You're seeing asphalt shingles have architectural asphalt shingles be 30-year or 40-year. If you drive to different areas in the world or in the nation, you go to Florida, you're going to see a lot of tile. You're going to see a lot of terracotta roofs. You go to Minnesota, you see a lot of masonry non-combustible buildings in general, just how it's constructed. So I'm curious to see as the wind, like if they could create a giant net to catch all the hail, that would make my life a lot easier. So I don't know if they can. Whoever does that will be a rich man. But yeah, just keeping up to date on your roofs as much as possible, thinking that through of what types of roofs are best to handle the weather in your areas. Talk to your roof contractors, because some roof contractors are just trying to get a job. They're going to look and they're just going to try to replace your entire roof. Maybe it doesn't need to be. So,
Joe, is that what led to the boom or the price increase in roofing to insure your roofs and all that?
Yeah, I think it definitely has a factor. I think that's partly the reason why you're seeing the insurance companies have to increase rates so much. Because as the cost to replace new buildings and cost of construction goes up and cost of materials go up, all the insurance companies have tried to catch up with inflation. And so that's why they keep bumping it up as the building values increase. And so I remember from 2020 to 2024, building values increased about 60% because the costs have gone so much. Contractors charge so much more, and there's also a need for how many contractors are out there, and there's not as many, so the demand is increased as well. So all that's a factor. Absolutely. Good question. And deductibles. Okay, good. Fire and lightning. This is an electrical panel called the company's called Federal Pacific. It's just a company where they had stab lock electrical panel. So basically, if the breaker would trip, it wouldn't trip, and so these things would catch on fire and light the whole building on fire. So this company went out of business. Federal Pacific went out of business in the 70s, 80s, and I still see them, but it's mostly in like out of date buildings. Just something you want to replace. So electrical, when you talk about fire, you really see it lightning, electrical, and then sometimes you see arson. Those, you can't really control that. When it comes to lightning, understanding what type of building you have. Sometimes you can talk to electrical engineers and maybe get suppression systems. You can get surge protectors, those sorts of things. Talking to an electrician would be really good about that. Obviously, updating electrical panels. You can have central monitoring system for fire alarms, and then making sure your fire extinguishers and smoke alarms are up to date. Sewage and drain backup. So this depends where you're at in your geographic location. If you're in the country, you may not have as much of an exposure for this, but I had a organization. They were on a main street in actually Morgantown, West Virginia, and apparently someone threw luggage down the drain and blocked up the whole city street, and so it backed up about $300,000 of sewage into the building. And so what underwriting required was them to install what's called a check valve system. And so you can sort of see the image here where the check valve system is, if you get heavy rains that pushes in, it's going to have this shut off, and it's going to filter back up and not go into the building per se. So it's just, when it comes to underground piping, sewage and drain backup is a huge issue. And so having someone come into your building and check out the underground piping, sometimes you'll have outdated piping underneath and you need to replace it. Just something to double check and try to prevent, because going through a claim is a pain in the butt. It really is. You're not going to be able to use your building for a period of time. It's going to be expensive. There's going to be costs that come out of your pocket. So if this is something that can maybe prevent it, depends again where you're at. If you're not running on city water or something like that, maybe it's not something you entertain, but maybe it's something that you could have a conversation about. I don't know why this technology hasn't been installed on all new construction. This is a water shutoff valve. Now, there's companies, several companies that do it. This one's called Flow Logic. There's also Water Hero and Leak Defense. And so it's not connected to your sprinkler system. That's a different system, okay? So this is just for your water system, right? And so if it detects a leak, if it detects, pipe burst, it's going to shut off the water system right away, okay? And it has alert to your phone. And so, it depends how thick your water system is and your water drain is. Flow Logic will go up to a 2-inch pipe system. Leak Defense will go up to 6-inch pipe system. So certain companies you might want to explore, see what might be the best fit for your property. But I think this just makes complete sense, just because pipe bursts are just such a challenge. They're just a huge challenge.
My parents use one.
Do they? How do they like it?
They like it after they had their hot water heater burst on.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's what usually happens. It's usually after the fact, and so it's definitely cool. I'm definitely going to install one in my household at some point. I don't have it as well, but yeah, when 2022 we get a polar vortex, December Christmas Eve, 2022. We had $15 million of pipe bursts because it went from really cold to really hot. And so, you're talking about churches left and right that can't hold services. And if they had water shut-off valve, they could hold services on Christmas Eve. So it makes a big difference. Some of this is just making sure you're winterizing your buildings. One of the other bane of my existence is water damage is the bane of my existence in sprinkler systems. And they're great. I love them. They save lives. I get it. But they can cause a lot of damage. Making sure you're getting your annual inspections. If you can get quarterly inspections, that's probably ideal. You can flush the systems out periodically. It costs a lot, but it might be good to do it occasionally. Leaky sprinkler heads, making sure you replace those. The thing about sprinkler systems and water damage in general, all it takes is one pipe to not be properly insulated for there to be a pipe burst or to be some sort of sprinkler head burst. So doing what you can to replace those and maintain those buildings as much as possible, it's really important. Install a centrally monitored system for your sprinkler system. And then flood insurance. Flood insurance, it's just something to consider. I know it's expensive. We have clients in Western Nashville, or in Nashville, in Western North Carolina, and selling flood insurance to people on a mountain is very difficult. They say, well, unless great flood happens, then we won't need it. Well, in that situation, very little people had flood insurance in Asheville, and that's all heavy waters. That's all flood insurance, ironically. So there's a lot of people that were just really just out of luck. So just something to consider. It's expensive. It's just something that you should consider and see if it makes sense. Maybe you get it for your main buildings. Maybe it's something you retain. Maybe this is something you put in your capital expenditure budget. And maybe make sure your drainage is working. So on those heavy rain days, how does this work? How does our building handle the heavy rains? Go from there. And that's it.